We're good. Just kind of, all right. I've been like running around the past like 2 minutes, like figuring out, okay, where's everything supposed to go? I don't even know if that's going to look all right. It's fine. Okay.
It looks great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Finding Faith podcast. I'm here with Victoria Baldwin. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. It's nice to meet you. This is literally the first time we were seeing each other in person. It's kind of been a thing now for me nowadays when it comes to this podcast.
Yeah. I love it though.
Hey, we go in. And whatever happens is supposed to happen, and whatever's supposed to be said is going to be said, and that's kind of how I take it every single time. So, kind of how it normally starts, I kind of just want to like to get to know you better. Like, what's your story? What do you do right now for work, and kind of just go from there.
Yeah. So, again, I'm Victoria. I'm from Hoover, Alabama. Was born and raised there. Left Alabama when I was 18. I went to play basketball in college when I was 18 in South Carolina at a small D2 school. And from there, I found the Lord in college, which is great. My junior year of college is when I found Jesus. I was like 2 weeks after turning 21. And I remember being a little bit disappointed because I'm like, well, I can't like, do the 21-year-old things. I found Jesus. Yep. But it was 2 weeks after I turned 21. And I just haven't looked back since. I stayed in South Carolina for a little bit. Okay. Interning at my church, personal training. Then I moved to Atlanta.
Personal training, like fitness personal training?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got my degree in college in exercise science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I personal trained for a little bit, interned at my church in South Carolina. Then I moved to Atlanta. Yeah. Nannied, worked for my church. Okay. Then I transitioned out of working for my church into social media, and that's what I do full time now. That's
so cool. So do you work with specific companies, or is there one company, or how does that work?
So I work for an agency and I do my own thing. So for the agency, we have clients and I just basically make content and edit for them. Oh, that's cool. And then a few days a week, and then the other days a week, I'm doing my own stuff and the brand deals and the stuff like that.
That's so cool. What do you use for your like editing stuff? Premiere, or do you use something else?
I use CapCut.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So you're like, you know how to do all the mobile stuff then.
Yeah, I love CapCut. Everyone says Splice is the best app, but it's not.
Really?
It's not. It's CapCut.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what
I have a monthly subscription to CapCut. I've used it like twice. I
get it.
Yeah. Gotta learn it. Gotta focus on it. Take 10 minutes or 30 minutes or however long it takes, and then figure it out. Okay, so you mentioned that you kind of moved here at first and you were working with the church. Was it the same church as before in South Carolina, or was this the new church?
So the new church I worked at for about a year was Passion City Church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I worked at the 515 location and a little bit at the Cumberland location.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I was on two different teams, and basically both of the teams were event-based teams, though. Okay. So I basically just had my hands on Sunday mornings, catering, events, stuff like that at the church.
Nice. All right. So you mentioned that you found Jesus kind of like when you turned 21, right?
I did.
Okay. So was this like this new thing that you never heard about before? Were you kind of raised? So you were not like raised inside of a church or anything like that? Or how did that work?
Okay. Alabama, Bible Belt.
Yep.
So we said we were Christians, but not really. Like we went to Easter. There was at one point where my dad did go to church for like a few years when I was younger, and I went with him every Sunday. Yeah. But like it just wasn't like, we never talked about it. Got it. You know what I mean?
Did it feel like almost like kind of like checking boxes at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Yep. And then what happened though? So 21, you just turned 21. You could legally do some things that you couldn't do before. And you like, what was it that happened to you where you were like, no, I'm putting my faith in all of this?
Yeah. So basketball was it's a huge part of my testimony. Okay. And I was just basically so miserable in South Carolina. Like it was the worst, like 3 years of my life, because the last year I knew Jesus. Got it. So I was playing basketball. My teammates were all of these girls that were nothing like me. We had nothing in common. I did not like them. They did not like me. I didn't like my coaches. I just had no friends. It was just horrible. And then, you eat, sleep, and breathe the sport. And so that's all I was doing. And I hated every second of it. Yeah. And that ended up making me like try to make the most of college. And I didn't know Jesus. So I'm like, okay, I'm about to go I'm going to go party and drink and
Yep.
try to do something to bring a smile to my face.
Yep.
And so that was when I started venturing out and just, that was literally, I never did it in high school.
Yep.
So college was the first time I started partying, and it was short lived, but I did it for a while. And then I literally had like a quarter life crisis. And I'm like, I don't even like this.
Yeah.
You know, like this is not, I'm not finding joy from this.
Nope.
It was just so much drama, you know, what comes with the world of alcohol.
Yep.
All types of drama, all that. I hated it. And so it was just it was probably a little bit, a year and a half of doing that. And I hit just like a rock bottom, and I left the bar one night. I was super drunk and I was driving, and I was about to go drop out of college and quit the team. I was going back to my dorm room to pack up all my stuff.
Around what month was this? Like, when was this?
Like the last week of January.
Okay.
Of 2018.
Got it.
So I was headed back to pack up my belongings and drop out of school, quit the team, leave South Carolina.
Wow.
Because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is just not what, you know, but I was drunk and emotional,
right,
you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I called my mom crying, and I'm like, Mom, I'm coming home. Like, I hate it here. Yeah. And she calmed me down and told me to go back to my room, because I was driving home at this point. It was a 6-hour drive to Alabama.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So she told me to turn the car around, please go to sleep, you know, get yourself together and maybe think about this in the morning.
Yep.
So I woke up, I went to church. Don't know why. Now knowing it was God.
So you went to church. Were you going to church like the previous couple weeks, or no?
No.
So you woke up and you're like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to go to church.
I need it. Yeah. It was just like I felt dirty in my sin. And I'm like, I need to go somewhere. And that's like not the club, the bar.
Yeah.
So I go to church that morning, and at one point in the sermon, the pastor was preaching about a fruit of the Spirit, and following Jesus is joy. And I was looking for joy this entire time.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, let's try this Jesus thing out. I need joy. And I gave my life to Jesus that day. I met some FCA girls
What's FCA?
FCA is Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Okay.
It's like this thing that I don't know if it's in the North, but it's really big in the South.
Okay.
But yeah, so I met these girls through FCA at the church that Sunday. They invited me to lunch. I went with them to lunch, and then they invited me to Bible study that night.
Okay.
And basically those girls played a huge role in my walk with Jesus that day and on.
Were they going to the same school as you, and they were just athletes in different sports?
They were athletes in different sports. So when I went to the Bible study that night, it was volleyball players, dance team, soccer players, and I was like the only basketball player.
Yeah.
And so they invited me to that FCA Bible study that night. I met my mentor there. She was my mentor for the next 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
And without those girls, I always say I don't know where I would be today with Jesus if it wasn't for that community that he literally gave me the day I gave my life to him.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's the backstory of 21.
That's so cool. So okay. So you were drunk. You were driving home, and then your mom was like, "Hey, sleep on it, and then if you still feel the same way, then go ahead and continue this process." So you decide, you wake up the next day, and you're like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to church today."
Yeah.
So you go to church, and you meet this amazing community, and the pastors. And it's funny that you say that. Like, the pastors say exactly what you need to hear, because how many times have I heard someone else's testimony where they're like, "I needed to hear one thing in particular."
Yeah.
And it just randomly came out of the pastor's mouth that day. That's not God, by the way. And so that happens. You gave your life to Christ. You start joining this FCA organization. You start meeting these other all women, right? Or
yeah.
No? Okay, all women who are basically in the same path that you are now. Like, what happened after that? So like you start meeting these people. Was everything great after that? Was there anything that like kind of spiraled down after that? Like, how was your process in walking faith after committing?
Okay. So it was great that first year. You know how you first give your life to Jesus and you're on that Jesus high.
Honeymoon phase.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, great, this is amazing. I can't believe I went this whole time without him. So it was great. And then we went into my senior year
Yes.
of college. And I think that was a little bit of when that was the first time I started experiencing spiritual warfare. And I'm like, okay, this is getting harder. But then I think I hit my lowest point with Jesus when I graduated college, because that no one talks about that transition period between college and adulthood.
Oh, 100%.
And it's so extremely hard. And I remember I was trying so hard to follow God's will. I'm like, God, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, the world's our oyster. Like, just point me. Like, I want to go with you. And he just was silent. And I was struggling so bad with getting a job. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I just remember feeling and all of my college friends moved away. They were from all over the country because they were athletes.
Yep.
And, none of the athletes actually come to the school are from that town, you know? So all of my friends left. And I was just at such a low point for a few months in 2019. And then I finally got the personal training job and then started interning at my church, and things were on the come up.
Passion City, we're talking about.
This was my South Carolina church.
Got it.
This church was called New Spring. It's like a multi-campus mega church, but I was at a smaller campus.
Nice.
Anyway, so that was where I interned. And I would say from there, we were steady. Up at me and Jesus, we were steady. Everything was good in 2019. 2020 happens, pandemic.
Yeah.
I actually had a great 2020 up until September.
Okay.
So this is where things again with me and Jesus get rocky, but we're doing great. I was spending time with Jesus like 3 or 4 hours a day.
Really?
Because we had nothing to do. And I was just like sitting at worship music, journaling, reading it was the best time with me and Jesus.
Yeah.
All of that happens all of 2020. And I'm working in a gym at this point and interning at my church.
Gym opened up now.
My gym shut down completely.
Yeah.
My church also shut down completely.
Yep.
So I had nothing, so I was just at home and in South Carolina still spending time with Jesus for so long. Then September hits, my childhood friend dies in a car crash. That was super hard and that hurt. That it broke my heart. He was only 19. And I was really close to his older sister. That was super hard. I go back to Alabama for the funeral.
Okay.
Me and my whole family get COVID at the funeral. My dad gets super sick. My mom doesn't get sick, but my dad gets super sick. He was sick for a month and he actually passed from COVID in 2020. In November. And of course, I'm like, what do you mean you're good, God? I don't believe anything you say anymore.
Yeah.
Why am I reading this Bible? And, it took me down that rabbit hole of just questioning everything and just literally not believing anything anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'd say it's probably about a month and a half of just hurting. I was hurting. I was grieving. And I realized that I needed God more than I was angry at him. And so that's kind of what took me back. I slowly started turning back on my worship music and got back on the straight and narrow with him. But I would probably say that was 100% my lowest point.
Yeah.
And from there, I've just been praying so hard that he would protect my mom. Because if anything happens to her, I'm I cannot go through this again.
Yep.
I can't. And so I'd say from there, we've been on the come up and we've been super steady the past 2 years. Because crazy enough, 2020 was 3 years ago when everything happened with my dad, which is insane because time flies. But
it really does.
I say the past 2 years, me and Jesus have been super steady. And I think that is the key with your walk. It's not being super, super, oh my gosh, I love him. I'm on this high or in a pit. It's just being steady, And I feel like the more you mature in your faith, the steadier it gets. And I think that's a safe place to be.
I think people assume that, I guess on the outside looking in, that with Christianity, people just think that everything is perfect. And that is the exact opposite. And then people say oh, well, if God exists, then why is there hurt in the world? God doesn't, the existence of God doesn't mean that there's going to be hurt in the world, but the existence of God means that through that hurt, there is a Father that is there, that is protecting you, that is going to be with you throughout that climb. Gosh, I obviously I'm so sorry that it happened.
It's okay.
I am curious, So that happened. You were in South Carolina still. This is before you got to Atlanta.
Yes, I was still in South Carolina.
Okay, so you come back, you start saying, you know what, I'm gonna turn on that worship music again. Hey God, I know I turned away for a little bit, but I want to get back. How did that? Was that when you were in Georgia now, or was that when you were still in South Carolina? Like, how did that transition get you to where you are right now?
Okay, so South Carolina.
Yes,
I'm in South Carolina. I'm hurting. Everything, we had the funeral, everything for my dad. Go back to South Carolina. Literally, I am.
Is basketball season over now, by the way?
I've graduated at this point.
Got it. Okay.
So I am the type of person that just hates not being okay. Like, I don't like being sad. I don't like being, so anything I could do to either laugh or like just be okay again, that's what I was doing in South Carolina for that remainder of the time.
Okay.
And I remember when everything happened with my dad, I had this another quarter life crisis, and I'm like, wait a second, life.
I can't have any more of these. Yeah,
but I'm like, life is a vapor, like the Bible says. Like, life is going to end. That's the first like close death I've ever experienced in my life, and I'm like, life actually ends. This is crazy. I have to do everything God wants me to do while I'm here. Like, I can't waste any time.
Yep.
And so I remember just getting antsy in South Carolina. And at this point, I have been praying to move to Atlanta for years.
Really? Why Atlanta?
Because I went to a Passion Conference in 2018.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And I did not know it was a church. I thought it was just a conference. But I found out that...
Wait, what year did you turn... What was it, 2019, 2020? When did you become a Christian?
2018.
Oh, 2018. Okay, so Passion Conference. So was that after you became like...
Yeah, that year, it was like the end of 2018 into 2019.
Okay.
So since 2018, I have been praying. I'm like, God, I want to go to this church. Like, I don't want to just attend this conference. I want to go to this church. I want to go to this church.
Yeah.
So I was praying. I was like, God, let me move to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, not yet. And I'm like, okay. So I just, every few months, I'm like, can I go? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay. So everything happened with my dad. And we get into 2021. This is the beginning of 2021. And I started feeling antsy in South Carolina. I'm like, I really feel like my time is coming to an end in South Carolina. But I don't know where I'm going next. But I knew it was a city.
Okay.
And so it was fast forward to May of 2021.
Got it.
I'm in the airport flying from South Carolina to Alabama for Mother's Day. And I was sitting at my gate and I was like, God, it's time to go from South Carolina, but where do you want me to go? So I was sitting at my gate. I wrote down all of these cities. I wrote down Charleston, Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta, Colorado, Nashville, like all of these cities. And he so clearly highlighted Atlanta to me. And I was like, are you telling me it's time to go? He's like, it's time to go. And I'm like, say less. I literally go home to Mother's Day, come back, and I moved 3 weeks later here to Atlanta.
What about your job? How'd that work out?
I told him I was leaving. I'm like, I have to go. Like,
no way.
Yeah. And so I've been here ever since.
What? You left your job. You said I'm moving to Atlanta. You just moved to Atlanta?
Yeah. I didn't know anyone. Didn't even have a job yet. But I had signed up to serve at Passion City Church before I even moved to the state yet. And so when I moved to Atlanta, I immediately jumped into serving at the church. Which in hindsight, it's how all of these job opportunities ended up coming.
What?
Yeah.
No way. All right, time out. First of all, so the first person I ever did a podcast with was a girl named Jasmine Davidson. And she had a similar situation where she was like, oh, it was Jasmine or was it? Jasmine or Michaela? Oh, no. Okay. Well, someone I interviewed, it might have been Michaela. No, Jasmine was from Arkansas. Hold on. Let me think about this. Jasmine moved here. It was Michaela. So a girl named Michaela came on here. She told me a very similar story where she was like, I had like 3 or 4 places highlighted or whatever. I chose one. I picked that one. And all of a sudden I just went with it. So that is so cool that also happened to you. That is awesome.
Yeah.
And then, but also, okay. So you quit everything. You move to Atlanta. You sign up. You get into what is the word? You start volunteering at Passion. Was that a job or was that not a job yet?
This wasn't a job yet.
Oh my gosh.
I was serving. And that's when I started nannying. So I started off nannying in Atlanta, which Atlanta is a great city to nanny in.
I heard.
Oh, it's fantastic. So that's what I started off doing. And oh my gosh, it was a 2 and a 3-year-old. Fell in love with the 2-year-old. I still think about her like every day. But that was temporary. And then after some months of that, that's when the job at Passion opened up.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. Do you have a roommate at the time, or how was that working out?
I actually started out living alone. That was horrible.
Yeah.
Because I already didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
You know? So then I moved out into the apartment. I literally just moved out last week.
Yes.
And I had a roommate from church in that apartment.
Okay.
And my roommate now we don't go to church together. We're just friends through like a ministry that we call Live Original that we do. But yeah.
Wait, Live Original? Isn't that Sadie Robert?
Yeah, that's her ministry.
Wait a second. Okay, let's go into this for a second. I'm a huge Sadie Robertson fan.
Yeah, I love her.
Huge fan. Love her podcast. What the heck? How did that start? What happened there?
Yeah, so I am a Live Original ambassador.
Wow.
This girl that I'm living with now, she also is an ambassador. It was God.
Yeah.
I got a random DM from their ministry back in January of this year.
Let's go.
And they were just like, hey, we love your content, your life. Would you ever be interested in being an ambassador for our ministry? And I was like, absolutely. I freaking love Sadie.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened. They just found me randomly off of some posts on social media.
Was this from your podcast? Like what post was it? Or is this like
they never told me. I don't know how they found me, honestly.
Did the podcast exist yet or no?
It did.
Okay.
It could have been podcast, but it also could have been TikTok. Because I had, at that time, there was a few TikToks popping off. So I genuinely don't know what it just had to be God. Like when I don't have an explanation, I'm like, it's God.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
I'll tell you what. So God, like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like hearing your story is so cool because I feel like you're just like, you know what? I'm going to be faithful. And hey, God, whatever happens, I know it's going to be an act of you. I'm going to stay positive, and I'm just going to know that whatever it is that you have planned for me, you're just going to do. And I feel like he's been working in your life consistently. Like it hasn't just been like, hey, this happened, and all of a sudden, like I knew it was an act of God. I was like, hey, this happened, then this happened, then this happened.
Yeah.
Like
I always compare myself to Paul.
Okay.
Because when I was like all out, like Paul was, I was all out from God. And then when I found him, I'm like, okay, I'm all in.
You were all in. Yeah.
And I just genuinely, I say this prayer every day, but I always wake up and I'm like, God, I don't really know what's going on today, but you just lead me by your spirit. And that's beautiful. So the most fun part about living with Jesus. You genuinely don't know what the day holds. Like the craziest stuff happens to me. And I'm just like, it's God. Like that's the only explanation. And so I think just literally surrendering your every move, your every step, he just comes through because you're approaching him with open hands, you know, and just letting him do whatever. So I genuinely feel like that might be why these things happen. I don't know, but I'm just very grateful. Like it's just so God.
See, I've been having the problem where God tells me to do things and I'm all in. And then if I get scared, like insecurities come in. And I was just talking about insecurities with my men's Bible study, but like insecurities will come in and then like you go to what's comfortable, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. Like I want to be like, you know what, God, I feel like I needed to talk to you about this, where it was like if you walk in faith, like there are going to be some bumps or whatever, but like don't turn to like the past, like move forward, keep on walking down that faith and just trust that God is going to guide you as you go.
It's crazy you say that because I had a revelation this week. I just posted about it, but I was reading Genesis chapter 2 and 3. And I had this revelation of when God created man and Adam and Eve, and then Satan comes in the garden and Eve's like, God said we can eat from any of these trees except this one tree.
Right.
And then Satan's like, you won't die, just eat from the tree. And then he convinces him to eat from the tree. God curses the world.
Yep.
And I was literally thinking that Satan has no new tricks because he does that same thing to us today. Whereas like we feel like going away from God is the answer. Like going back to our old self, going to this one rotten tree, one rotten part of ourself is more freeing than going God's way when there's all of this freedom, all of these trees with fruit over here. But Satan is convincing us to hang on to this rotten part and to go back to like what God has freed us from.
And what happens? You feel disgusted.
100%.
Oh, this is good.
That's because you're literally eating rotten fruit.
Yeah.
And that's why I just wish I could tell everyone in this entire planet Earth that walking in your sin is not freedom. But that is what Satan wants us to believe.
100%.
Is choosing this other life is so much more freeing than all that God has for us. And that's just simply not the truth.
And then what happens when you, like, let's use partying as an example. So Satan tells you, like, hey, you should have fun. You should drink some alcohol. You should go to this party. You should go to this club. What happens the next day? You feel miserable. You feel so unclean. You feel like you're disgusted with yourself. So explain to me how if something was supposed to be good, after you do the thing that was supposed to be good, you feel 10 times worse than you did before.
It's just, it's literally like night and day. And like the Bible says, the person who keeps going back to XYZ is like a dog going back to their vomit. And vomit's disgusting. Like, I think that was the perfect analogy in the Bible to explain us as humans going back to this stuff. It truly is going back to our most disgusting states and partaking in this stuff. And it's just so not freeing. It's just not. Like, it might feel good. Most of the stuff I'm thinking really doesn't even feel that great.
No, it's not.
It's just, we're just doing it just because. And it's
because we're comfortable, because we're used. It's the past, right? Yeah. So let's turn to something comfortable versus going in and trusting God that He has a plan for us and something better.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a picture, and it's Jesus, and he's got like something behind his back. And it's a little girl.
Yes, the teddy bear.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I love that picture.
And the girl's like, but I love this thing. And like, if only you knew that God has a better plan for you. Just waiting to provide for you. And you just need to have faith and trust in Him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. And I also feel like one of Satan's tactics is to make us rush or feel like we're behind, because God does have that big teddy bear waiting to give us this bigger gift.
Yep.
But it's not that we're messing up God's plan, but we're almost intervening, like helping God out, even though He doesn't need our help. And it could be delaying things, or it could just not be. You could be stepping in a door that God is so clearly saying, don't go. Like, I could have moved to Atlanta in 2018 when God was clearly saying, not yet.
Yes.
And I do feel like the timing of everything is almost synonymous to the blessings that have popped up out of nowhere, just being obedient to the timing. And so the rushing is what can keep that bigger gift from coming into fruition when it's time.
I completely agree with you. God's timing, not mine. Right. And basically, I completely agree. Like, what it comes down to is like, sometimes there might be the perfect situation, but you're not ready yet for that situation. So like, for example, moving to Atlanta, yes, you could have won a couple of years ago, but would everything have happened so perfectly the way that it did had you gone back then? I don't know if it would have. Like, I feel like everything that you're saying, like, this happened for a specific reason at a specific time, and you're just going within, you're trusting in. There's so much power and honestly, there's so much respect that I have for you to decipher that this was the time that you were supposed to do these things, and then it all worked out. For example, I feel like that's a hard thing to do when people get anxious and they're like, hey, I want this now, so I'm going to go after it now. And being able to like know the difference, like, how would you say you dive into understanding the difference between what you want and what God has planned for you?
I feel like, our desires of our heart is from God. And so it wasn't a bad thing that I wanted to move to Atlanta in 2018 and 2019. Right. And 2020. It just wasn't time yet.
Yes.
And so I think a prayer to pray often is, God, align my desires with yours. Because there's so much content and stuff we consume every day that throws our desires off. Like, for instance, I don't like traveling. And sometimes I'll get on social media and see a girl traveling and being cute. And I'm like, I want to travel. And I'm like, no, I don't.
No, I don't.
Like, I don't even like traveling. What do you mean? And so it really is just almost like straightening yourself up every day of like, God, my desires, align my desires with yours. If this is something I'm not supposed to be desiring, then get it out. And so when there is a desire in there, I think it's just important for me. I've experienced when it's a desire, pray into it, but there's going to be a peace that comes when it's time for that desire to come to fruition. And for example, when I was a little girl, I hated Atlanta. I played basketball my entire life. We had so many tournaments here in Atlanta, Swanee, Georgia, just in the Georgia area. And as a little girl, we always come to Atlanta. I'm like, I hate it here. Like, I'd never move here. How do people live here? And then like all of a sudden I have this desire to move to Atlanta that came out of nowhere. And now I'm here. And there was just a peace. I also hate moving in transition. And this move that I just did last week to this new apartment, I was like, God, please, like, just let me love it. Like, help me. Like, and I have never been more excited to transition and never had a smoother transition.
That's great.
And so it's just like, make sure you are constantly asking God to align your desires with his. And it's going to happen in his timing, and you're going to feel a peace. I recently heard a pastor say that's not necessarily true, that you won't like necessarily feel peace when God says something. But I'm like, every uncomfortable thing that I have done in this life that has been God ordained, I've had peace going, even if I'm uncomfortable.
I agree.
You know? And so I think peace is just the number one metric of measurement to figure out that next step, or if that's God and that desire, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because the enemy is providing you anxiety. Right.
For sure.
So the enemy wants to distract you, wants to destroy you, comes to steal. And like how you were saying, anything that is an act of God, in my opinion, brings me peace.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
You mentioned you just moved into your new apartment. Do you mind explaining kind of like how that happened?
Yeah. So my friend, I'm moved into this new apartment with this organization.
Nice.
Called Apartment Life.
Okay.
And how that happened was my friend is already in it. She moved from Orlando to Atlanta to be a part of this organization.
Nice.
And they had an opening for an apartment in Midtown. And she messaged me and she's like, Victoria, like, I just feel like you'd be great at what we have to do. Basically, it's like an event type thing.
Nice.
And so you have to have a big personality. You have to be extroverted. You have to just be able to talk to strangers.
Check.
Right. And she was like, Victoria, I think you'd be great at this. Just apply. And I prayed about it. I don't know if I felt peace, but it was just one of those things of like, here's my application, God, do whatever. And I was just super prayerful of like, if you don't want me to do this, please close the door.
Yeah.
And so
don't let it happen.
Don't let it happen.
Yes.
Because I honestly hate making decisions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather for God to be so crystal clear to me than like me actually have to decide. Yeah. But yeah. And so that happened. My friend was like, Victoria, this is, I feel like this is for you. Apply. I applied and it worked out seamlessly. And now we're in this new apartment and it's crazy in Midtown.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy.
That's so cool. How far is it from Passion?
10 minutes.
That's not bad.
5:15, 14-ish minutes, Cumberland.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually close to you.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be further.
Yeah. I'm just randomly, you're like, where are you? I'm like, I don't know. I'm close to Cumberland. I honestly don't even know where I am. Yeah. Still learning things. Okay. So Passion now. You were volunteering there. We have a couple mutual friends. So like,
we do.
What does that look like now? And like what you mentioned a few people who've been on this podcast before. We got Jake Beck, we got Brandon Bond, we got Carlton, like all these people who have been on this podcast now. Like, how did you get introduced to them? What are you doing right now with Passion? Like, what's the goals or like just what is your path there?
So Passion, right now I stepped out of the paying roles.
Got it.
And I still am volunteering. We call it door holding.
Yes,
at the
door
church.
holding. Yep.
But I'm still volunteering in every space that I was doing.
Okay.
Before the paid roles, during the paid roles, and I'm still doing the same things. So I lead a young adult group of women up in Alpharetta.
Okay.
Once a week we have Bible study, just family groups. I lead that with my co-leader Julia.
Okay.
I also am on the worship team. So I sing for students and all the things. Aww. And I social media, young adult social media. I run that account.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I do social media for them.
That's so cool. Okay, was it PCC?
Young adults.
Yeah.
Yes, that's us.
Okay.
Jake and Braden. LOL. So this summer, me and Jake. Have you heard of Passion Camp?
Yeah.
Yeah. So me and Jake.
Was that in like Florida or something like that?
Yes, Daytona.
All right.
So me, Jake, and Braden, randomly, along with our other friends, got asked to be squad leaders.
Okay.
So basically,
together or separately?
Me and Jake together.
Got it.
Braden was a squad leader on another team with our friend Delaney.
Got it.
And so me, Jake, and Braden really, I know Braden, but Jake, don't know. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Jake.
He's awesome.
But we ended up having to go, the squad leaders, they rented us a car for Passion Camp, stuck us all in there and said, have fun. And we drove 8 hours to Daytona.
Let's go.
Really did not know each other at all. And when we got to Passion Camp, we had to be these dressed up in adult costumes. So me and Jake were Boom. That was our squad team. So we had to dress up as Boom. So we basically just wore, and our color was green. Okay. So he wore a green bodysuit. I
remember this.
Yes. And I wore a green t-shirt, green leggings, and a green tutu.
Let's go.
And me and Jake had Boom on our chest. And we were just on stage screaming in front of 5,000 kids all week and made a fool of ourselves. It was so fun though. And I am so glad in hindsight that Jake was my partner.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have wanted do it with anyone else. We made a great team. Yeah. We kind of clashed a little bit just because like me and Jake both are kind of sassy. So like, it was fun. It was fun.
That is so funny.
And so that was where me and Jake and Braden became close, and Delaney, and now we have like monthly dinners.
Really?
But, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's how I got connected with them.
What's the situation with Carlton then?
Carlton, I love him. So 2021, we did a collab game night with my family group and his family group. And that was where it was December 2021. It was like a Christmas thing. And that was where I first met Carlton and Clayton Nesda. Is he still in that Monday night group?
Clayton just passed his bar.
Oh, amazing. I know that. So Clayton, what's that? Brad, Teddy?
Yep, Brad.
So I met a lot of your guys that night in 2021.
That's crazy.
So that was the first time I met Carlton. I don't know what it was about Carlton, but we just hit it off, and we just have been so close ever since. And he came on my podcast a few months ago. We talked about singleness on the male side. He did amazing. That was one of the most viewed episodes on YouTube and the podcast apps I've ever gotten with Carlton.
Maybe you sparked it. Maybe your podcast that you had with him was like, you know what? I got to talk about this.
He did great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's kind of and then he invites me to hang out a lot, and like we've just hung out pickleball.
Yeah.
Me and Carlton are just randomly always doing things.
I'm scared to play pickleball. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself. All I hear about is like how it hurts you. I used to do gymnastics. I was a gymnast.
Really?
Yeah, I was a gymnast, and I was an all-star cheerleader, and yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
you're just throwing that out there like that's not a big deal.
I don't know. It's fine. But like I'm afraid I'm gonna hurt myself now. I just started running.
Yeah.
Now my boss just told me, because I was like, hey, I'm gonna train for like a half marathon. He's like, why don't you just do a full marathon? I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing a full marathon.
Okay. But I feel like, how long ago was the gymnastics and cheerleading? Or what? Well, I'm gonna ask you more later. But like, when did you do that? Did you do it for college?
I did. I went to state in high school for gymnastics. Okay. That's when I also started cheerleading. Went to a competition that my sister was doing at Six Flags Great America, like the amusement park. And I saw some people doing backflips, and I was like, I want to learn how to do a backflip. Yeah. So I told the coach that she was like a family friend. And I told her that I was going to go to their next practice. She's like, okay, sounds good. I'm like, no, I'm serious. She's like, sure you are. Showed up to practice next day, and they're like, all right, you're going to be with that team. And it was like the level 2, like people 4 years younger than me, because I wasn't good. And I stuck with it, and I just became addicted to it. And then next thing I know, like I took it very seriously. I got pretty good at it. And then in college, I also did All-Star. I competed for a team called Spirit Athletics. In Kentucky. Went to Disney World and did the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you must be super strong. Because all the gymnasts, all y'all are free, like y'all, that's the sport I have almost the most. Gymnasts and swimmers. Oh. Those are the two sports where
I sink.
Me too. It's so hard for me.
I sink.
Me too. But those are the two sports where I'm like, y'all are freak athletes, like super up there.
Yep. I'll tell you what, So I just started running. I never thought I could run because like I was a sprinter. I like short distance or like just I love maxing because I feel like I'm way stronger doing like one than I am like multiple reps, right? So like this whole running thing, I was like, I can't run. Like I haven't ran in like honestly like before a couple months ago, like 5-10 years. Haven't ran. Right. So tried doing it. I think I ran like a 12-minute mile, and then I just kind of kept on doing it. And then next thing you know, I got a couple of friends over here now, and like we kind of run together, and like we did 6 miles. And I was like, you know what? Let me try 9. So I do 9 miles, and I did it. My knee kind of hurts, but I did it.
Yeah.
So but like what there is something with kind of zoning in and just kind of being with yourself, like being alone in your thoughts and kind of just going from there. And I'll tell you what, like talking about peace, like I kind of understand, like I'm still not a fan of running, but there is something about like breathing, like breath work and just kind of being in the zone and just seeing what happens after there. You test yourself a lot. That's what I will say.
Have
Getting
you
out of
ever
your comfort zone.
experienced the runner's high yet?
Yeah, I will say after. So like after I got done, I wasn't like, this is the worst thing in the world. I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel amazing. So I have experienced that. And I've also experienced just the fact of like, I was almost on like autopilot when I was running. So instead of thinking how terrible it was to run, like how I normally do, it was like, I found my breath. I found like my heart rate that I want to get at. And like, I never understood that before, but I think I'm starting to understand it now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've experienced runner's high once in my, I hate running.
It? Me too.
Hate running.
Just
but
keep
college,
doing it.
college, we had a crazy runner. I had a crazy runner coach in high school and another crazy runner coach in college.
Oh no.
So all we did was run. And in college, we would run miles and miles and miles and miles. And I remember one time in my life, now I've ran thousands of times in my life. One time I experienced runner's high and I literally felt like I was floating on a cloud and ran the fastest 3-mile run I've ever ran in my entire life.
All right, I got to keep on going. I'm going to chase that.
No, seriously, it was crazy. I didn't know it was real until I experienced it.
Really?
But it's real.
Okay.
If I can get the runner's high, anybody
So
can.
what you're saying is you're going to start training for this marathon.
That's negative.
26 miles. Let's go.
That is a negative. Hard no.
You mentioned your podcast.
Yeah.
How did that start? What made you go, you know what I need to do? I'm going to start a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about God on it.
So in 2018, when I was kind of searching and like trying to figure out like what God wanted me to do, I remember I was looking on YouTube for Bible studies.
Okay.
And I was looking for a specific channel that did Bible studies from Genesis chapter 1 to Revelation. I don't even know the last chapter, like 20, whatever, but the very last chapter in Revelation. And I was looking for a chronological like Bible study channel on YouTube. And I could not find it anywhere. And I remember I heard the soft voice from the Holy Spirit and it was like, Victoria, why don't you do that?
Yes.
And I'm like, I heard it so clear. I heard it so clear. And so I was like, I mean, why not? So then I started the YouTube channel in 2018 of the Bible studies. And
what was that like? Okay, so like, what did you do on those?
I basically did like 3 chapters of Bible study, and I used a bunch of commentaries to study it, and I would teach it, turn the camera on, and just teach people what I was learning out of Genesis 1 through 3, and then Genesis 4 through. And I went all the way through.
Can we plug this? What was the name of the YouTube channel?
Well,
it's gone. Okay,
let me finish. Let me finish.
I got you.
Channel is still. It was called Bible Studies with Victoria.
Okay.
5 years. Is that 5 years ago?
Whoa,
that's crazy. Anyways, it started off as Bible Studies with Victoria, and so we went through a few books. And then I remember I was getting bored with the Old Testament, so I jumped to the New Testament. So we did a bunch of stuff in the New Testament. But then I remember just one day, I feel like God, there's so much development when you're walking with him. You know?
Yeah.
And I remember just one day having this revelation of like, God has really given me a gift of like just walking with him and telling others how to do that.
Okay.
And so that's when the YouTube channel transitioned into the podcast.
Got it.
And so now on the YouTube, I mean, I do a few vlogs when I'm bored, but it's mostly the podcast.
Okay.
And I remember I was praying. I was like, God, what's the title of the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, The Way. And the mantra or whatever is welcome to The Way podcast, where we talk about Yahweh and how to live life his way.
Oh.
And so every episode is basically just like tackling a topic of like, how do you walk with Jesus in this area? So like, how do you find a church? How do you find community?
Yeah.
Just things of that nature.
Ooh.
And so that's kind of how the podcast evolved from that YouTube channel. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Do you
Yeah.
still have those old videos on there?
Yeah, they're
Did you?
still up.
Okay.
But don't go look.
No,
I don't even know what my theology was probably wrong. I don't know what.
No, it's okay. I won't know, so it's okay. It doesn't matter.
But yeah.
No, I mean, the theology being an issue. So basically, like, I am not an expert when it comes to Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to me was, and we can talk about this later, was I've had an experience where God was talking to me, and he said, "You got to start this." I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing." He's like, "You're gonna find out anyway." But I don't know. But like, how am I gonna be equipped for it? Like, I don't know how I'm gonna have these conversations. Like, it's not something I've done before. Don't worry about it. It's gonna work out. So like, I completely understand that. But also like, the whole point of this podcast is to get other people's perspectives. Like, I want to know why you believe in God. I want to know what happened. I want to know if there's hardships or not. And you went through so much, but one thing that did come out of it was like this immense faith in God, this fellowship, this walk in Christ. And I know that everybody like walks in their faith in different speeds, and I feel like you've been going full speed ahead and just trusting him, and you've been rewarded for it immensely, which is amazing.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy, but I would, and to answer your question, another like a reason why I believe in God is because I truly feel like life did not make sense before him. Like when I met him, I'm like, okay, this all makes sense now. And so I just feel like without him, I remember my biggest question growing up was like, why am I here on earth?
Yes.
Like,
what is the point?
Why are we here? Like, it just didn't make sense. And I was living through my parents, trying to go play pro basketball. Didn't want to do that at all. Like, just did not have any goals for myself. And I'm a super goal oriented person. I've been this way since I was a little girl. And so I just felt off growing up because my goals weren't mine. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so when I met him, I'm like, okay, this is why we're here. This is what he wants me to do. Okay, now these are my goals. Okay, these are my goals.
Yep.
This is from him. This makes sense.
Yep.
And it's just like a light bulb. My light bulb finally turned on when I met him, you know?
That's so cool.
It's crazy. I'm so grateful for him. It's just insane.
I know we're about to do a little flip flop.
Yeah.
So basically what's going to happen is we just did the Finding Faith podcast. Now we're going to do Victoria's podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm pumped for it. So
I'm
Victoria,
excited.
thank you so much for being on. I really do appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.